Hello, my name's April Rimpo. I'll be teaching storytelling with figures at Sheep Joe's in Boone, North Carolina. I wanted to have a chance to give you a little insights into my class. There are three major segments in the class. We'll start out with some basics. They're mixing colors in order to get natural skin tones. Now, we won't be working in natural skin tones necessarily in the whole class, but I feel as though being able to get used to doing, especially the face on a figure and also folds in fabrics is pretty important. And starting with natural colored skin, I think helps you in the learning process. So we'll do that first. Once we get through that, we're going to transition to looking at being a little more interpretive in your paintings and altering colors from reality. It may be altering in the flesh tones and it may be altering in other ways. So I'm going to show you a few examples of what I'm talking about here in a minute. The third segment is going to be figures as part of an environment. So now we're not looking at just, the bust, upper part doing portraits. We're looking at figures in a scene. In fact, we probably started to do that even in the previous segment. And how do we tell the story? So there's two levels of story. One level could be on just a head and shoulders of a person, and it could be a story about that person, about something they love to do, can be whatever it is that motivated you to want to paint this person. In the second case, which is our third segment of this class, in the environment is often a story not only about the person, but maybe about an activity they like to do, or maybe it's about a place. Maybe they're from a different country and there's something about that country that you want to communicate as well. Let me show you some examples of what we're going to do so that you have a little bit better understanding of what it is I'm driving at. And this first one here, this is a picture of what we would do in the part one. So part one is where we're learning about flesh tones. Now, color studies would be on a separate piece of paper, but here are some line drawings I have of 4 different heads, and we would work through probably one of those as part of the very beginning of the class. And that's just to establish how to mix those natural skin tones. Now, another part of this first segment is learning how to paint wrinkles in clothing. And so you can see some of those here. I'm going to zoom my camera back out. So you can see in this case, I have not done the flesh tones. I've only focused on the clothing and all of the wrinkles that appear in clothing when we're walking or moving. Uh, and also, I also included in this one is how to do a wash of something that's fairly solid in color, and you want to have some variation in those colors. If I had done the entire shirt one color, say perhaps the more brown area for the whole thing, you wouldn't feel like it was on a person. You want to have, you want to get the contours of the clothing just like you want to get the contours in the face. And so during the first day, we're going to look at the natural skin colors, and we're also going to look at how to do folds in clothing. All right, so that's day one. I expect that on day two, we'll be ready for working on the next step, which is the being more interpretive in our paintings. And so I also have a couple of examples of that. And this would be the first ones I'm going to show you are going to serve two purposes. these people are from Guatemala. So when we work on skin tones, we'll also be looking at skin tones for people who have darker skin. And so this is a possibility of not the specific image, but working on people who are more Latino in background. And here, however, I was pretty literal. Actually, let me try to slide this over a little bit, get rid of that glare. Pretty literal on the facial colors on the man. I did not do too much shifting of the color on his face, with the exception of the environment that you're sitting in will always impact your flesh tones, and you're going to get some reflected color. And so there are little tiny bits of a kind of a pale green on the side of his face, where the light is hitting him and it's picking up some of the greens in the background. Now on her face, I was a little less literal. So although the reflection from her clothing would appear on the lower part of her face, it would probably not reflect up here. But I chose to include some of the brighter pinker and redder colors higher on her face, just to, it makes her face a little more interesting. And so, and for me in Guatemala, it was the clothing the women made by hand that really fascinated me. And so when I can repeat the colors from the clothing, I do tend to do that. And then this painting, so we're now seeing an African American woman and the shift in color. Now, um, this photograph that I took was at a concert, and the lighting on the stage was very vivid colors, purples, greens. And so her flesh tone was not her natural flesh tone in my photographs. And it required that I go do some research about Erica Fall and find some other photos of her where she was not lit differently on stage. And so that I could see what her skin tone really was like. And I discovered that she has quite a bit of a reddish tinge to her skin. So in this case, the colors you're seeing in her skin have not been intentionally altered. These are pretty close to her normal skin tones. Now, the story in this one is this concert, and because I find concerts extremely energizing. So I wanted it to be clear that she was singing, therefore additional instruments in the background, and not, for example, giving a talk or something. Now here, the colors in the photo are fairly accurate for what I painted. And so you can see here that I was having a great deal of fun with shifting the colors, picking up again, not the way they would really be reflecting in real life, but picking up the colors from his shirt and bringing them all the way up, over his face and into his hat. That is not reflected color. That's an intentional decision on my part to do that. The colors on his shoulders are repeating the colors from the sign above. And so I did a lot of bringing colors into areas where they were not. I also did a lot of simplifying shapes in this painting, so that the painting, I wanted it to be your focus to be here in their dance and their interaction in their dance, and not so much in their clothing. So I did a lot of simplifications in clothing and did not really work to create any wrinkles or anything, folds in the clothing, because in this case, I didn't want you looking there. And I want to show you one other painting. This is a painting that was based on an old family photo that was black and white. So I had to decide what colors I wanted to use, and I chose to use a palette that was a purple, lime green, and orange palette. It's a triad, but it's a shifted triad, so it's not your standard red, yellow, blue. but it's been rotated around the color wheel. And I happen to have fallen in love with this color scheme, so I do tend to use it fairly often in my work. I will bring line drawings, um, a variety of line drawings. And for the first segment where we're working on just understanding the face, getting the shadows and the curvature of the face, um, I'm going to recommend that people use the same line drawing that I'm using for my demonstration. After that, they can either use the line drawings that I provide, or they can come in with their own images that they have drawn on their paper and do the lessons on their own work. And then I'm going to show you two other things, and I'll show you them at the same time here. So we now have figures who are in a setting in both of these. This is the rock climber who has made it up onto this very tall pinnacle. And he's surrounded by more cliffs. I absolutely love painting people who are very adventuresome, probably because I am not adventuresome myself. And and so I wanted to put him in this setting, which is where I photographed him. I was obviously on higher ground so that I was at his level, um, even though he was significantly off the valley floor, um, because he looked so at ease. Looked like he was just up there relaxing, having a very nice little quiet time by himself. And I wanted to portray that. Um, so that's the story behind this painting. The other one is a story about this man and his child or grandchild. I don't know which, obviously. These were just people that I saw at this fishing location. And uh, he, he and the boy are fishing from the rocks. They didn't, if you traveled through this building, you could get out to this pier. They chose not to paint from the pier. Um, and it was their interaction that really drew me to want to paint this piece. So this is, a good example. Both of these are good examples of stories that are behind the scene that I felt and I wanted to share with others. So I hope that overview helps you understand what I'm going to cover in my workshop, Telling Stories with Figures. We have a lot to cover, but I think we can do it in the 5 days, and I hope you will join me. See you at Cheap Joe's in Boone, North Carolina, the last week of April, beginning of May. Thanks.